You're listening to Pod for Israel. For more information, go to oneforisrael.org. All right, I want to welcome you back to another series of Pod for Israel. I have again with us Dr. Broshi, and we had a lot of comments from the last series. I think there were some people who said, man, this whole series turned my world upside down. And the big question that a lot of people are asking is, so what is inside of traditional Judaism that is actually biblical? You know, because we kind of really showed the 7 ways the rabbis undid the biblical Judaism and created what it is today in this revolution, rabbinic revolution. So, go on. What do we have that we can actually see is true motivation and biblical from the mitzvot, from the commandments?
So, first of all, we have to know we are obligated to the Torah of the Messiah, to the teaching of Yeshua. So that's a good place to start. Is start obeying the teaching of the Messiah, and even the rabbis have a saying that when God sent the Messiah, He's going to bring a new covenant, a new Torah by Him.
Which that's in Jeremiah, it talks about that.
Yeah,
but even the rabbis say that the Messiah will bring
a new Torah,
covenant,
a new Torah with Him.
Wow.
So we should keep the Torah, the commandments of Yeshua. That's the first thing.
And on the other side, you have some saying, Yeshua has abolished the commandments. Now, is that actually true? Did He abolish all the commandments? They have no application for our life anymore?
I think the word is fulfilled.
That's right.
He fulfilled the command, the Torah, and the whole Tanakh, the whole New Old Testament is speaking about Yeshua. Is waiting for Yeshua. We talked about the narrative. Remember
right.
that the Tanakh, the Old Testament, has a narrative that points to Yeshua, and now it's like the Bible gave birth to the Son, to the Messiah.
Wow.
So is it? Did He abolish it? No, He fulfilled it.
Right.
It's the essence. This is the essence of the Old Testament, to point to the Messiah and the new law that the Messiah would bring, a higher law. Remember, he always took it to a higher level.
Right.
You heard that it was said that you shouldn't hate your brother, or you shouldn't fornicate with a woman, with a woman. And I tell you, if you even look. Mm-hmm. So he took it to even a higher level, even a higher plane,
and really brought it to the heart. And so, and again, all Scripture is God-breathed, good for doctrine and reproof. So we know that this isn't irrelevant for us. It's very relevant. The Old Testament, as we look at the Torah and the commandments and the prophets, it's all relevant for us today to learn God's heart, to learn what makes Him mad, what makes Him happy. It's like in a relationship. You're going to get to know your wife. You're going to get to know what moves her and makes her mad, makes her happy. And that's, I think, why we study. That's our motivation. It has to be inside of that because this is a relationship with our God.
So in this new series, what we're going to do is take the most highly commandments that we have even in rabbinic Judaism, the most exalted commandments,
right?
And the motivations to keep it, and what's the essence of every commandment. And we'll start maybe this episode with the Shabbat. What we say Shabbat,
right?
You say
Sabbath,
Sabbath,
Shabbat,
yeah. And again, we see many times in the New Testament that not every time, but many times when Yeshua is healing a person, He's healing him on the Sabbath,
right?
And who does He get? Who's giving Him a hard time for doing it?
The Pharisees.
The Pharisees. And why? Because they saw the Sabbath as something else that I can say Scripture and Yeshua saw the Sabbath. So the question arises. The question is, what is the essence of the Sabbath then?
Right.
So we'll go to the Torah. We'll start with the Torah, because Yeshua was a Torah abiding Jew, right? So we'll start with Exodus, the 20th chapter, Exodus 20, and there it says that you should keep the Sabbath, or it says on verse 8, you should remember the Sabbath. Why? What's the first reason for us to remember the Sabbath? The first reason, to remember that God created the world in 6 days. And on the 7th day. So that's the first reason to say I'm one of those fools, quote unquote, that believes that God created the world.
Right.
And I'll prove it to you. Every day in the week, I'm gonna remember the Sabbath because God created the world in 6 days and He rested on the Sabbath. And that's the first reason that God Himself gives in the Torah,
Right.
for keeping the Sabbath, for remembering the Sabbath. Actually, the first time it says remember. In Deuteronomy, it says keep it or observe it. But the first time in Exodus 8, it says remember the day of the Sabbath, because 6 days God created the world and He rested on the Sabbath day. And then comes the maybe a more important thing even. Who has to observe the Sabbath, or who do you as a Jewish man have to see that observes the Sabbath? And it goes on to say, so it says, you shall keep the Sabbath, but not only you, the bnei beitcha, so everybody in your household, your slaves, even your donkey or your cow, and even the foreigner who lives in your gates, the foreigner, the non-Jew, the Gentile. He could be your slave, but even the Gentile could keep the Sabbath. Now the question is, why? I thought that it was given only for Jews. Why does God command that even the Gentiles that lives in Israel among the Jews to keep the Sabbath? I thought the commandments are only the 613 commandments were given only to Jews, right?
Nope.
So what is this all about? What's the reason? Well, who needs the Sabbath? Who needs a rest the most? If you're a Jewish man and let's say you have a field and you have people that work for you, and some of them are Gentiles, like today actually in Israel. Right. Most of the hard labor, the physical labor, is done, like in most Western countries, is done by foreigners.
Right.
Even in Israel today. So in this case, who would need the most a rest at least 1 day a week? The boss that sits in the office, or the hard workers that work in the field and happen to be foreigners? Who do you think would need it the most?
Right. And this is part of our commission to be a light to the nations. And so if we're observing this and yet putting a different standard upon those around us, that would be hypocritical. That would not be the way God operates.
So I'll tell you what happened. Israel under the rabbinic tradition had gone so far from Exodus the 20th chapter that tell us to take care of the foreigner, the Gentile, on the Sabbath. In Israel, we went so far that today, if a Gentile keeps the Sabbath, he's breaking the law.
No, really.
According to the halakha, the Rambam says, the Rambam, Maimonides, he's saying, and he's quoting the sages, he's quoting the Pharisees. If a Gentile keeps the Sabbath, you ought to kill him.
That's ridiculous.
So the Torah says the Gentile is first and foremost for the hardworking Gentile that works for you as a slave. And the rabbinic tradition says Gentiles are not allowed to keep the commandments, let alone the Sabbath. So did you see how far did we go?
Yeah, it's straight up contradicting.
Now I'll tell you, you go in weekends. In weekends in Israel, you go to a hotel. It's full of secular, of religious Jews. Who do you think is working there?
The Gentiles.
The Gentiles. They could be Arabs. They could be foreign workers. But they're
in fact, that's something you do. If you're Orthodox, you go to a hotel on the weekend. I mean,
it's much easier.
I mean, everyone does it. Everyone does it. If you're, I guess if your circuit breaker goes out, you can just walk down to the front desk. But again, it's like living here. It's crazy. On the Shabbat, I can't touch a button that would open an elevator, but yet.
That's why in Israel we have a new...
climb 10 flights of stairs or get into the Shabbat elevator and hit every floor.
Exactly, and that's a new invention, a Shabbat elevator. I hope our listeners know. Can you say a few words about what is the Sabbath
elevator? It goes every floor up.
Stops every floor.
And then it goes down.
Why does it stop every floor?
People literally will take the stairs like 6 or 8 flights.
But why does it stop every floor, the elevator of Shabbat?
They can't so that they don't have to touch the number that they're on.
Because they're not allowed to even press the button.
Yeah.
That's why there's even a newer invention in Israel and under the rabbinic the rabbinic tradition that is called a Gentile for Sabbath. Goy shel Shabbat. It's a Shabbos Goy, yeah. A Gentile can do it because he's not obligated and he shouldn't keep the Sabbath. What? What do you mean he shouldn't keep It's given for him also.
Yeah.
Read the Torah. You're saying you're keeping the Torah? Keep the Torah.
And so again, let's come back to the heart of God on it. Why did God want us to rest? So one, you mentioned one motivation is that he wanted us to recognize him as the creator, okay? But then two, for my family, it's like this is the day we get to hang out as a family. We get to stop what we're doing. And you know what? We're a pretty rebellious and stubborn people. We really are. And in fact, that's a human condition, not just a Jewish condition. But God needs to stop us. He really, and have you ever heard of being worked to death? Like in Japan, they talk about some people are literally working themselves to the point of death, where the cause of death is that they never rested.
But again, we have to make sure that the focus is not on us. It's on our neighbor. We need to make sure that our neighbor gets the Sabbath. So it's not only me, and I have to keep the Sabbath, and I keep it holier than you do.
Right.
No, take care of the poor, of the needy, that they would get the rest, because they work the hardest.
Right.
They make the physical labor.
And you'll see that in all the festivals of God. You're supposed to invite the stranger, invite the orphan, invite the widow, invite the person who doesn't have, share your blessings with them. And it was like basically these were big barbecue, backyard barbecues and stuff like that. You're going to bring all your friends and everyone that you could to these festivals.
So even before Yeshua came, enter stage a prophet that couldn't take it anymore. God used Isaiah, and you can read it on the first chapter of Isaiah, and he uses harsh words. When Isaiah, the first chapter, and I'm reading the Hebrew, but verse, I think it's 14. I hope it's 14 in English as well. When God says he hates the Sabbath, the holy days.
Yeah.
What made God come to a point where he has to speak through a prophet and say that he hates the Sabbath, the sacrifices, the holy days that he himself, in Leviticus in the 23rd chapter, God himself gave it. What made God hate it? He uses the word hate in Hebrew.
Yeah.
What made God hate the Sabbath? And he says it through Isaiah. And Isaiah himself gives the answer. And I hope it's the right chapter in English. In Hebrew, it's chapter 58. Chapter 58, he said he's speaking about fasting, about keeping the Sabbath. And he's saying, you missed it, Israel. Isaiah is telling Israel through, God is speaking through Isaiah. And Isaiah is saying, you missed it completely.
And so what does Isaiah say is the reason?
He says,
what
even about fasting. Can you say it with an American accent?
Yeah,
fasting?
Fasting, yeah, I think they hear you. Yeah.
Fasting, yeah, not to eat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even that. Yom Kippur here is crazy because who can survive it better? Who is holier? And Isaiah is saying you missed it. You missed the essence of fasting. Yeah. It's all about taking care of the poor. He's saying,
for loosening the bonds of the afflicted.
He's saying in verse, and I'm reading from 50. It's Isaiah 58, verse 7. He says, "You want to hear what's real fasting? What really impresses God? You hotshot, righteous religious man. You want to hear? Give food to the poor. You want to fast? Fast on your own expense. Give your food to the needy, to the poor. That's my kind of fast, say God. Yeah, says God through Isaiah. You want to impress me with your righteousness? Take care of your neighbors. Take care of your poor. That can make me, that can impress me. And even the Sabbath. Take care of the needy. Don't take care only for yourself. Don't think only about yourself, how righteous you can look when you keep the Sabbath.
Right.
Make sure that the needy have a rest day. Make sure that the needy have something to eat all year when you're enjoying yourself, with all kinds of foods that people every other in other places than the world couldn't dream of.
And Isaiah even talks about loosing the bonds of the afflicted, and that's literally what Yeshua was doing. He was healing, casting out demons, setting people free from affliction, and so he was fulfilling the prophet Isaiah. He was fulfilling the true heart of the commandment and what it was really about.
Yeah, and he talks about the Sabbath in the same chapter in verses 12 and 13. And again, he's saying, you wanna know what's a real Sabbath? Again, take care of the orphan, the widow, the poor, the foreigner, the Gentile that lives in your gates. That should be your motivation. To keep that's the real Sabbath. So going back to Yeshua time, when he listen, what did he do on Sabbath that made him so angry? The religious folks. What did he do? He took care of a crippled guy, of somebody with leprosy.
Right.
What did he do? He took care of the needy. He did the highest thing you can do on the Sabbath. He took care of people in need, broken people, broken physically and spiritually. And that provoked the anger of the most righteous religious people everywhere, anywhere in the world, the Pharisees. Why did it provoke them to such anger? Because they thought, hey, this rabbi, this Yeshua guy, we thought he's righteous. We thought he's a holy man, and look at him. He's breaking the Sabbath. He's healing people on the Sabbath. And he tells them, wait a minute, guys. If your ox, if you say ox or cow, falls into a hole in the Sabbath, wouldn't you rescue the cow?
Yeah.
So he's a son of Abraham and is suffering.
Now, and so the rabbis, in years, since have, made the statements and so forth that to save a life, you can desecrate the Shabbat. And I mean, I know...
But they mean the life of a Jew, by the way. I'm sorry to say that, but it means the life... In the context, they mean the life of a Jew. But okay, but to save a life, you can...
Right.
Yeah, you can break the Sabbath. But they say, okay, but Yeshua didn't save a life. It was only a leprosy, or it was only a broken back. It wasn't pikuach nefesh.
There's some exceptions, right? Just like even right now we're dealing with the coronavirus and all this stuff like that. They would make exceptions, but it would be very few and far between. But even their exceptions are a little bit backwards. Like right now, there's this whole thing where online there's an article about some rabbis that were saying that Orthodox rabbis, they said, Passover's coming. And
the Leil
it's the
Seder,
mitzvah to be able to do the Seder together as a family. So we're going to make an exception and allow you to get on Skype or Zoom, or FaceTime, whatever, and Skype your family during Shabbat.
Which is forbidden, which is usually
absolutely forbidden. Yeah, you can't touch a computer. You can't touch a button on your elevator, but now we're going to open up. And by the way, that Sabbath day, the Passover Seder day, is a ultra high holy day. This isn't just a regular Shabbat. This is an ultra high holy day. So for them to say that is...
And again, what does it prove to you? It proves that they are the gatekeepers of the spiritual life of the Jewish world.
Right.
They can ban the commandments, they can make an exception, but only they. Mm-hmm. You understand?
And
not Yeshua. Not Yeshua. He did it without their authority. That's that they were so angry. He didn't get an approval from a majority rule in the yeshiva.
Hey, not to say, I mean, I think that's awesome that
exactly.
they're opening those doors. But the thing is, you got to look again at what is the original legalism that they define their life with, and then now they're making this exception.
I'll tell you a personal story. There's a religious, what a kibbutz is, right?
Yeah.
Kibbutz. There's more than 300.
It's a little kind of like a communal farm.
Yeah.
That we all work together.
So there's over 300 kibbutzes in Israel, and there's also something like 10 religious, ultra-Orthodox religious kibbutzim.
Right.
Orthodox kibbutzim, which the members that live there are Orthodox. They're keeping the oral law.
Right.
And in one of the kibbutzim that I know personally, they had I don't know if they have it today, but they had a dairy farm, a milk cows. And they had to find a solution what to do, because the cows, you have to milk them 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So but how do you do it? If you want to keep the Torah or the oral law, the rabbinic tradition, you cannot milk the cow on the 7th day. But if you don't keep the cows on the 7th day, you're hurting them because you have to do it. So they got a special permission from the Rabbanut, from the legal,
right.
From the rabbinic court in Israel.
Yeah.
A special permission from the rabbinic court to milk the cows, to work on the 7th day for this principle, for milking the cows on the 7th. So again, it just proves that the rabbis can do it. They have the authority to bend the rules, but the principle is that they have the authority.
Right.
Not you, not me, not anybody else, not even the Messiah when he comes, not even Yeshua. Only they have the authority to do it, to overturn or to dismiss or to bend a mitzvah, a commandment.
So again, I don't think that's something, that ruling isn't something we would disagree with. Because, of course.
It's
just like when your ox falls in the ditch. I mean, this is something, if the cow's not milked, he's going to really be in massive pain. And so you do it for the animal,
and
right?
that's just, that shows us when Yeshua healed on the Sabbath, they were angry because of the essence, that he did it on his own.
He didn't consult
And
the rabbis
again,
on that,
they thought of him, they thought they would see a holy man. They always told him, why do you sit with the sinners? Why do you hang around the sinners, those pathetic sinners? Yeah, and not only that, you're gonna break the Sabbath for those pathetic sinners? And they didn't understand the essence.
Because in their mind, if you were sick, it was because you did something wrong. If you were born lame, your parents must have been sinners. That was the thought of the day.
And
is that if something bad happened to you, you must be, some sort of, you did something trashy, or your parents did, or your grandparents.
And
did,
we
somebody.
have something like 1 minute till the end. So I just want to say they and we have to be careful that we don't do it today. But they miss the essence of Shabbat, of Sabbath. The essence is taking care of your neighbor, not thinking of how holy can I appear, or what do I need to do to impress God. You want to impress God, you hotshot? Help your neighbor. Help the broken people around you. That's the essence of the Shabbat. And this is how Yeshua kept it. And that's the example that we have today and we have to follow today. It doesn't matter which denomination we go to. We have to check ourselves. Are the commandments, do we keep the commandments for us? Yeah. For our own sakes? Or do we completely abolish ourselves for our neighbor's sakes?
And I would also just add in there, is it only Shabbat, Saturday, or is it a day of rest? And I think that you take the day of rest, and in some places you can't. I know part of the whole thing that there was a big debate in the early church was the Judaizers, the people who were coming and trying to load on the commandments on the Gentiles. Again, the Gentiles, a lot of these guys were slaves. There was a lot of Jewish slaves in the Roman Empire at that time. You're telling them that if you're going to follow the Messiah, you're going to have to do all these things, and you can do it. Well, then you must not really have faith. You must not really be holy. Well, God said this is His commandments. You have to do them. But they're slave masters. You're not going to go up to your slave master and say, "Excuse me, master, can I have Shabbat off? Because it says in the Torah, he's going to whip you." And I mean, that's not merciful. Again, it's like thinking of the animal. The animal doesn't. He didn't have the option. So it's like for a lot of these people, in the context of the scriptures, they didn't have the freedom. They didn't have the freedom to be able to observe the commandments the way, like kosher laws and things like that. I mean, they couldn't go up to their master and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think this was a kosher kill, or this wasn't this was sacrificed to at the Athena's temple. I can't really eat that, master. I'm sorry." These things were held over them and lorded over them with legalism, and that's what was being spoken against.
So just before we end, again, with God's grace, on the next chapter we're going to talk about kosher, and it's going to be a little bit provocative. I just warn everybody in advance, but
that's fine.
But just to remind, so the Sabbath was given first to remember that God is the boss. God created the world. He's the creator. To remember the creation that God did. And second, to take care of the needy, of the broken, of the poor. Not of number one, of myself. Making sure that I take care of people around me.
And third, I think he's drawing the heart of the fathers to the children again, and the children to their fathers. And it's about relationship. Relationship, the family stops everything, and it's a date night. You and your wife, me and my wife, we have a date night because it's sanctified time. It's set apart. Whatever comes, hey, if work calls and says, I need this, sorry. This is already planned. It's already in the schedule. I got to take care of this. And so you're going to have that time. And so I think that these are all beautiful principles that we can take from the scripture and look at the heart of the commandments, not just the letter, but what was God trying to speak to us? And how can we fulfill that according to the heart of the matter?
Amen.
All right. Well, excited for next week's episode. God bless.